Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find this show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And of course, you can listen to the rebroadcast on Friday nights on a host of other stations, including Awake and People's Internet Radio. And of course, now you can also listen on Saturday evenings from 6 to 8 out in Utah on KYAH AM 540. So lots of new ways to listen to the show. Of course, you can always go to my website and download it directly, or on TuneIn, Stitcher, and iTunes, and of course, YouTube. And quickly, before we get to today's episode, a big thank you to Rogia, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, for recently signing up to Patreon. And a big thank you to everyone out there who has increased their pledges on Patreon. It's greatly appreciated by me, and of course, everyone that loves the show. And also a quick reminder that Patreon is not going to be implementing their idiotic new transaction fees. So we won that battle, guys, and I'm glad to have fought that with all of you who were complaining. And it's nice to know that even in today's world, there are some CEOs in Silicon Valley that do actually care about the people that use their product. But anyway, we are joined, thankfully, by our good friend and now frequent guest on the show, JP Sottile, of course, the man behind newsvandal.com and the Newsvandal News Rundown. I was just remarking to JP when we were off air that I've just had the worst start to my week. I lost the recording that I did with Christoph Gehrman, so we're going to have to redo that. My phone was acting up, and I was extremely late for work. But JP, how are you doing?
Doing well. And look, your week is not as bad as Patreon's when they tried to roll that thing out. I mean, that thing went down in flames.
I know. Yeah. No, I was talking about it with my friend. And, we were just complaining, and the expletives were flying back and forth. We couldn't believe this was happening. And then I left to go to work, and then he emails me saying, you're not going to believe this, but they actually did listen to all of the people that use Patreon, all the creators on Patreon. So pretty, I don't know, kind of amazing, a little, people power moment there. Because
I'll be a little bit more cynical about it, because I think, the letter that came out pointed to people losing supporters. Because as soon as you say we're going to have a new system, whether it's for good or for ill, immediately people say, okay, I've had enough. Mm-hmm. And it was just a bad rollout all the way around. And I think that basically they knew where their bread was buttered, and that's with people like you and me. I mean, they have to have us. And if they lose us, it's only a matter of time before more alternatives arise. I know there are a couple alternatives out there. And actually, now PayPal has the PayPal Me interface. Mm-hmm. And it's so you just create a page, and it's so simple, one link, and somebody can go to PayPal and give you money. So it's, they got to deal with the competition, unlike Paul Ryan and the Republicans in the House, who just passed their tax reform. Remember, it's a reform. It's not a cut. It's a reform, even though it's riddled with loopholes and all kinds of gifts, and it's not nearly the simplification of the tax code that they'd like everybody to say it is. You're not gonna be able to do it on a postcard, because they didn't simplify it the way they said they were going to simplify it. But what they did do was pad the wallets of their biggest donors, because their biggest donors came to them a couple months ago and said, if you don't pass tax reform, or tax cuts for us, tax reform, we're not going to pony up when it comes time for you guys to run for re-election in 2018. And they've already got a 2018 mess on their hands. So they are going for broke, Pierce. They figure we're just going to hope that people do their taxes, they get a little bit more money, and they say, hey, those Republicans, they are looking out for us. I got an extra $500 this year, so I'm going to go ahead and reelect them.
Well, I guess on that note, JP, and I was telling you this before earlier today, that I'm actually fairly ignorant, and I'm sad to say, of this tax reform bill. Just so many other things to pay attention to. I know that I probably should have been paying more attention to this, as taxes are such an important part of our lives. But are we even going to see a small I mean, if I didn't pay, if I had an extra $500 come, tax day, tax returns or whatever, I guess I would be pretty excited, although I'm hesitant to even buy into that sort of a message. I know that's what the GOP is floating, and I don't necessarily trust everything the Democrats say either. Right. But are we even going to see something like that, or is this just sort of one of those promises, and then lo and behold, we either end up paying more or the same amount anyway?
I don't think we actually know. I think we know in abstract terms. Tax Policy Center and all the different assessments that have come out by partisan and nonpartisan think tanks. The Republicans' own assessment, the Democrats' obvious counter narrative on it. We really don't know. We don't know how it's going to affect people like you and me, who are basically kind of independents, freelancers. We don't know how it's going. We know that there are going to be some tax cuts for everybody. We also know that for the people in the bottom four brackets, particularly people between $20,000 and $35,000 a year, $20,000 and $40,000 a year, they're going to likely see a tax increase somewhere between 2021 and 2025. Because a lot of these provisions have sunsets in them. And they had to do the sunset provisions because to go to conference, because this bill was written in conference. Let's back up. The House passed a bill, the Senate passed a bill. But because the Senate passed their bill on just a bare majority, not with the 60-vote supermajority, they had to be below a threshold in terms of the amount of money it adds to deficits in the debt. So to jury rig that, they had to put these sunset provisions in so that over the life of the bill, it doesn't add X number of dollars to the national debt. Therefore, you don't have to have meet the 60-vote threshold. But to do that, you also then have to go into conference to resolve with the House version, which didn't have that same constriction. So the House version went for broke. The Senate version had all the different sort of Frankenstein provisions sewn onto it to get Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski and Bob Corker. And we've learned over the last few days that Bob Corker had a provision put in there on his behalf by Orrin Hatch. So any of this, I think there are 16 like real estate millionaires, mega millionaires almost in the Senate. They're all going to get a huge tax cut as a result of this bill. That's one of the little sweeteners that was put in there. And Corker, who was against the bill and then suddenly for it, and people are saying, oh, we see why, because you got your bread buttered. Right. So they had to go into conference. And what that is they go into resolve the two bills, and that's done behind closed doors, just the leadership of the House and leadership of the Senate. Republicans come together, and then they come out and they plop a 600-page, 700-page bill on the table, and they say, okay, we're going to vote. And so what we've seen over the last particularly 36 hours, David Sirota is the guy who found the Corker thing. He's over at International Business Times. Everybody's poring over all the different details and subclauses and everything to find all the goodies. We haven't found all the goodies yet. We don't know how it's going to work functionally. People haven't gotten their first paychecks to see if the withholding is different, all the paycheck garnishing that happens for people who are wage earners as opposed to people who live off of capital gains. We don't know, but we do know this. There is going to be a huge windfall for corporations, and there's going to be a huge windfall for people in the upper 3%, particularly the upper 2%, and the maximum windfall is going to be for people in the 1%. So they're going to get a large amount of money back, and people at the bottom are going to get less. And it's actually been said by Mnuchin and Gary Cohn when it said, hey, all the benefits seem to be going to the top. And they say, well, we're not worried about it because we think if people get something, they're not going to care if other people get more.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that seems to be the logic that they're putting forward with all of this. I was before we were recording, I was watching Sarah Huckabee in the White House press conference, and she, just like you were saying there before, JP, I mean, she was sort of like, well, we don't really know what's going to happen. Yeah. And this is the person that's supposed to be out there selling this to the press. Yeah. And she was sort of like, well, we're just going to have to wait and, sort of like, well, fingers crossed, hold your breath. Everything is going to be okay, we think. And then, of course, she had to field these awkward questions. Well, this is going to benefit Trump's business end of the spectrum. And she says, well, yes, of course, it might benefit a little bit. But he's, his sort of personal wealth is going to be taxed a bit more. And it's kind of like, well, first off, is it actually? And then second off, I mean, who cares if he's making more from the business end, then it doesn't really matter about his familial wealth. And you were telling me this also. This is a highly unpopular tax bill. I know that the Trump cult members are all praising this like it's, the second coming.
See, here's the wrinkle, Pierce. Before Bannon left, he was arguing for an increase of the tax rate for the upper brackets. Because Bannon knows that the Trump coalition, such as it is comprised of people who were hammered by the deindustrialization of the United States, who were hammered, and many of them still reeling. It's been debunked that Trump's main core of support came from people who were lower income. There is a large lower income part of it, though, because there are a lot of upper income people who supported him as well. It's not only a populist wave, but there are enough people, particularly in the Rust Belt in the South, who think that the wealthy are getting away with murder, and it got away with murder after 2008. I think that one of the untold, underappreciated stories of the last 8 years is the impact that Occupy Wall Street had on the mentality of the American voter. We think now in terms of 1%, 99%. That's part of our lexicon. They inserted that into the lexicon, and it's never gone away. And it's part of the lexicon of the lower income end of Trump supporters. And Bannon knows this. And Bannon, trying to create this new coalition, pulling the lingering Rust Belt Democrats and lingering sort of suburban Democrats and Democrats from the exurbs who were a little disillusioned on cultural issues with the Democrats, bring them in on this economic issue, this economic nationalism. Part of that was, let's tax people at the top. And he was laughed out of the room on that one. And Mnuchin and Gary Cohn and Trump and all of the Paul Ryan. Look, you got Paul Ryan, by the way, who I'm pretty convinced, particularly after today's speech, where he was positively giddy about this tax cut, in no small part because this is the prelude to cutting Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, by the way. As far as the Republicans are concerned, this is a guy who obviously, as far as I can tell, used to masturbate to a dog-eared copy of Atlas Shrugged when he was a teenager. Yes. So, those guys did not want to increase the upper tax brackets, those tax rates, because they are part of what Bannon is trying to overturn. So there's this other interesting texture inside of it, because I look at that. There's the CNN poll today is 33% support this. 33%. That's up from 31% last month. So this is a brand new poll today. Those opposed has gone from 45% to 55%. So more people are opposed today to this than were before, which is another, I think, why the Democrats just sit back. They're just saying, you go ahead and do it because we're going to run on this 1%, 99% thing. But I think it's a much trickier issue for Republicans because this is old country club, business roundtable, Chamber of Commerce, Koch brothers kind of stuff. And I think that there is a fissure inside of even Trump's coalition that is going to be an electoral problem for the Republicans potentially in next year.
Oh, no, and I guess if I was to put on my more sort of tinfoil or cynical hat here, I almost wonder if this isn't deliberate in that maybe there is some faction of the GOP that sees this as a way to kind of unseat Trump, that he becomes so unpopular because of this that, let's say he loses the next election or something like that, and then the GOP can kind of reinsert the more typical candidate, even though I think Trump more or less sort of, he fits into that mold. They don't really care that much, but they would much rather, like a Mitt Romney or something like that, someone of that ilk.
That's a great call. It's a great call, Pierce. That's a great call, because Bannon said in his last event with Roy Moore, he said, "You watch what happens when the Republicans get their tax bill. They will cut loose Donald Trump." And so it would be a twofer. And as you know, Pierce, as somebody who's studied many of these kinds of black ops and false flags and, surreptitious operations, you never do anything unless there's a twofer. Mm-hmm. You don't do it for the one-fer, right?
Yeah.
You want two things. One thing would be undercut Donald Trump. The other thing is get rich. I mean, it's perfect, right? Mm. So, but I think the thing is that Republicans are going to pay. I think that's what maybe stands against that argument, because this is like an electoral maelstrom, as far as I can tell, building next year. You have the Me Too thing. Women are signing up to be candidates in record numbers right now all around the country. We have the Roy Moore thing in Alabama. Could be an outlier because Roy Moore was such a creepy dude.
But has he even conceded?
He hasn't. No, but I mean,
Yeah, I mean, in all but name only. But I mean, he's still essentially saying that I don't know. But he's going to recount everything.
Yeah, he's waiting for the Lord to come. The Lord is tarrying. So anyway, but there's Virginia, and when you look at that Virginia election that everybody talks about, you look at the other races. There are things that happened in Montana and Connecticut, and North Dakota, kind of shows that the enthusiasm is there to build a wave. So way I look at this is that this is, let's get what we can while we can, because we're all about to lose power. Mm-hmm. And this is the hoarding economy. And although Sarah Huckabee Sanders can't tell you what's going to happen, she can't predict, and Dave Bratt and all of these Freedom Caucus guys in Congress say, oh, growth is going to go to 5%, it's going to be amazing. I think we know, based on recent history, what's going to happen, Pierce. It's going to create a bubble. And that's what these tax cuts do. The Reagan tax cut, there were two phases of it, but there was the big one in '83, and then there was another one. Those turned into a massive bubble and financialization. It's the process of financialization that seems to be tied to these tax cuts, because what you do is you give a huge amount of money. This is supply side economics. You give a huge amount of money to the people at the top, right? You say the supply side says, let's supply the people at the top with a huge influx of capital that they will then invest into the economy, and that will trickle down to everybody because that will generate growth, as opposed to demand side economics, which is Milton Keynes and Keynesianism, which ruled prior to the Reagan administration, and this was developed during the 30s in particular, and implemented in no small part by FDR, which is, let's create demand. Let's go ahead and go into government spending to create work programs and to create demand and employment, so that you put money in the hands of the consumer on the demand side, and that demand will stoke growth as they go out and seek to buy products. And what I think we see with the supply side is that it creates financialization, because the people at the top take these windfalls and they go into the market and they become corporate raiders, and they start buying and selling exotic financial instruments because they want to take their money to make more money. And they don't do it by making widgets in Peoria. They do it by making deals on Wall Street.
Well, I mean, and that's our wonderful Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross was known as like the top bankruptcy corporate raider
right.
On Wall Street. I mean, that's how he made his money, working for the Rothschilds. Also, so again, really draining the swamp there. But I guess I'm just I wonder if this will create a true groundswell. I know, you were, I think it was last Tuesday, you were talking with our friend Chuck Ocelli about The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, running for president. Right. And maybe that he could actually get some sort of a movement going, some sort of a true, maybe not a real alternative, because I can't really see him creating something, but he could create something where they're like, both of these parties are horrible and suck. Vote for me. You will actually see something different. And people might do that almost as a protest. And I would say I would probably vote for The Rock if he ran. But I guess it just sort of begs the question, if does the GOP just assume that, well, at the end of the day, there's only us or the Democrats? Even if we screw up enough, you're still gonna. It seems like a very risky gamble, and in spite of these pictures of Paul Ryan, with ear to ear smile, I can't help but wonder if he is concerned at all about this.
Well, there was a story last week that he was soul searching, and I can't remember who it was on Twitter who said, it was a comedian who said, "Good luck finding your soul." That he was soul searching about potentially leaving after the 2018 election, like basically shepherding the Republicans through the election process, and then once the election happened, he would resign. Now he is facing a pretty stiff challenge in his own district from a blue collar, Packers fans, a guy with a mustache who was I think he was a steel worker or a boiler maker or something, a steam fitter. Who's running a hard populist campaign against him. There are going to be a number of these challenges. We've seen a lot. I think the number is up to at least like 16 now. Republicans in the House have said, and these are not sexual assault related resignations, who have said they're not going to run again. I think the Republicans see, and this doubles back to your original thought, that maybe the Republicans wouldn't mind taking a bath in the next election cycle if it helped purge Trump from the party. Because in the long run, the Trump coalition is not going to work electorally. Trump won because of dampened turnout. And, we are seeing now that enthusiasm is really where elections are won. If your people are willing to come out and vote, you can win. And one of the sort of the genius elements of the Trump campaign, which was lucking into genius because Hillary Clinton was such a toxic and unlikable campaigner, and so laden with baggage stretching back 30 years, and people were so loath to vote for her that they had the benefit of having a smaller pool of voters that they had to compete in. So the relative power of the Trump voter was expanded vis-a-vis the declining turnout of the Clinton voter. 5 million people did not show up. There were 5 million people the Democrats were counting on to show up, did not show up. 5 million. There's your election right there. And if it was Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden even, I think it's safe to say that at least half of those people would have shown up. Even if a third had shown up, Trump would not be president. And I think the Republicans know all this. They know that the demographics are moving in another direction. They see that there's a really interesting poll. There's this generic party poll that comes out in the year prior to the congressional elections, particularly the off-year elections. It's a generic party question. Would you rather see the Republicans or the Democrats in charge? And when you look at 18 to 29-year-olds or 30-year-olds, by a margin of 48%, they prefer Democrats. 48. Yeah, that's a big number. And so I know that Republicans behind the scenes, the Mitch McConnells of the world, they're looking at this data and saying, this is not something in the long run we can work with. So maybe in the short term, it does make sense to take a hit in this next election, have it be a loss for Trump in 2018 going into 2020. But in the interim, you've lined the pockets of all your donors. You've lined your own pockets. And the great hoarding is underway once again. This is maybe the third great hoarding or the fourth great hoarding if you consider the Clinton economy, which I think was a hoarding economy as well. And in the process, it's going to be a potential budget buster that is going to make it possible for Paul Ryan to get his ultimate wish list, who, by the way, talked about in an extensive interview about 9 months ago how he used to dream about cutting welfare and Medicaid when he was doing beer bong hits in college. Literally. He said, yeah, I'd be sitting there at the kegger and, I've been dreaming about cutting Medicare and Medicaid and since I was at the kegger in college. I mean, so maybe this is just like you say, a go for broke strategy, but not go for broke in terms of we think we're going to win, but we might as well just wreck the place before we leave and get what we can because we know we're going over the cliff.
And I think I'd agree with you there too, in this notion that even Bannon sort of, we're going to change the Republican Party. I mean, that doesn't happen. That's not going to happen with Donald Trump, and it's not going to happen even in one presidency. I mean, this idea that you can defeat one of the two behemoths in American politics by voting for somebody, I think is just sort of foolish thinking. And even if the Republicans take a big hit and what, I mean, you look at something like British politics, which has been around longer, historically than the U.S. politics, and you had the Tories in power for decades, until things swayed, and then Tony Blair was around forever. These parties don't just disappear; they might take a hit for quite some time. But I think it's a little nearsighted to think that just simply by wearing a red "Make America Great Again" hat and voting for Trump, you're going to somehow change the system entirely, especially when so many aspects of the system are so ingrained in our political and social structure that it's just not going to happen. JP, should we then, as a hedge against this, should we start investing in Bitcoin?
Right. Oh my gosh. And you know what? I actually think that there is an element of this tax bill in the Bitcoin run. I think, if you look at the stock market, we interpret it as the economy. It's not the economy. There's a wonderful piece today in Bloomberg on Trump asking people, I think it was on Twitter, he said, hey, everybody's 401k is doing great, right? How great is your 401k? Well, most people don't have a 401k.
Yeah, I don't have one.
and most of those, we talked about that coalition, the low end of Trump's coalition, they don't have a 401k. The vast majority of people have no interest, no financial interest in the stock market. And the stock market is being driven by what? It's being driven by speculation and by buybacks and by promises of something that's to come, and people not wanting to be left behind because it's going. Well, if it's going to keep going, I want to get in. There's an element of that also in Bitcoin, and it's almost like a feeding frenzy. It reminds me of a story about the end of sturgeon. I think it's the Black Sea. When the everybody said, "Oh my gosh, now's the time to make money on caviar." And as they kept fishing the sturgeon closer to extinction, the price of the caviar was going down because the market was getting flooded. So people were fishing for more sturgeon, and it turned into a collapse. And that kind of feeding frenzy that happens in markets is what I see here. And unfortunately, this feeding frenzy that we have now was fed by the Fed. The Fed fed the feeding frenzy with quantitative easing, because a lot of this stock market gain that we have seen over the last 5 or 6 years, which is now turned into a frenzy, was buoyed by quantitative easing, putting basically free money, no interest loans in the hands of people on Wall Street, corporations, who then turned around and used that money to buy back their own stocks, which drove up the price of the stock as they were buying their own stock, and it was distorting the market. Why? Because the CEOs and the guys on the boards and all the leadership of the corporations have in their compensation packages two things. One, stock options, and two, more stock options tied to the stock's performance. So the better the stock performs, the more stock options they get, which means their stock options are worth more money if they go out there and drive up the price of the stock, which they did with quantitative easing. And this is exactly what's going to happen with this windfall. They're going to go and they're going to do two things. They're going to pay out some dividends, and they're going to buy back their own stocks. And it's going to lead to it's a bubble that is unavoidable, it seems to me, and is historically provable. We've had the Reagan bubble, we had the Clinton bubble, which is similar insofar as Clinton was that presidency. There were two things. One, there was this massive flood of consumer debt that happened in the 90s. People ended up, the average card-holding family had 5 credit cards by the end of Clinton's administration. Prior to that, they had 1, maybe 2. It was like 1.8. So you end up with 5 at the end. So people were buying all those plastic widgets from China that came from outsourcing with credit cards. The other thing is that we saw the transition from defined benefit pension plans to 401ks. Why? Because Wall Street said, God, aren't 401ks better there, John Q. Public? Because we think they're better because we're tired of your money being tied up in a defined benefit pension plan that, like a CalPERS or whatever, where they have huge amounts they have economies of scale that they can marshal to affect Wall Street. Instead of having that, we'd like to have that money go back to you through your 401k, and then as it goes to you, it actually ends up coming to us, so that all of your pension money as an individual comes into Wall Street, and we get to use that to play our games, as opposed to having large pension plans being able to play Wall Street to their ends. Wall Street got to play everybody by dividing and conquering their money through 401ks. And what did that lead to? By the end of Clinton's bust, a boom and bust cycle, when the bust came, everybody took a bath on 401ks. Are we going to see that again? I think it's likely. The same process happened again with the Bush tax cut. Bush tax cut came. A lot of money went into the economy. It didn't go into the productive economy, into building widgets. It went into speculation. We got the housing crisis, which was a combination of speculation by those at the top and predatory lending for those at the bottom who were trying to catch up with all the speculation that was being fueled at the top. And boom, we got a crash, and here we are again.
No, and like you said, I can see this on the horizon, and then of course, we're gonna have to live through everybody and their mother writing a book how they, I predicted this, years back. I didn't tell anybody. Right. I was just, but I knew it was gonna happen. Right. So I had my book deal ready with Random House, just in time for the holiday season or something. It's and I can see that more and more, and just quickly, because I'm by no means an expert on the economy. I think you know far more than I, and nor am I much of an expert on the Bitcoin stuff. But I do just find it fascinating how now, everybody is talking about Bitcoin. And I remember back, this was when it first was in its infancy. There was, I think it was an article in the New Yorker talking about Bitcoin and talking about the idea that it might have been this Satoshi Nakamoto. Or they didn't use his real name, but they hinted that it was this Japanese web designer who may have been in charge of this. And now, of course, it's sort of taken on a mind of its own. Nobody really knows who created it. And yet now everyone is so obsessed with it. And oddly, I find that it's becoming now more and more integrated into the world economy in air quotes, really into the stock market. Now suddenly you can trade on Bitcoin futures. Right. Now, if you go to I think it's like coinmarketcap.com, there's like 1,000 different cryptocurrencies, some of which are worth 0.00001% percent of like a dollar. Meaningless. And it just strikes me as yet another sort of turd in the punch bowl that's just sort of being added onto this. And again, I mean, if suddenly the stock market dips or something, that will have a huge effect on Bitcoin. I know that people are predicting it's going to be, $1 million and whatnot. I'm sure I'm going to get all sorts of angry emails from Bitcoin proponents. But it does just seem like yet another one of the, maybe not totally similar to like the housing bubble, but it does seem like, so suddenly everyone is people that have never traded stock before are buying Bitcoin, and they're going to Bitcoin exchanges, and they're buying other Litecoin and Ethereum and Potcoin. Dennis Rodman's, he's a spokesperson for, and it just, I don't know. What do you make of that? We can move on from it, but it just seems like a wild thing.
I think it's fascinating. There are 29 cryptocurrencies with market caps over $1 billion now. That was in Business Insider this morning.
But what does that even really mean? Because is that? I wonder if that's really truly reflective of how much cryptocurrency is out there, and how much is actually being traded.
Well, I mean, look at anything. I mean, this is kind of the weird environment we're in with the highly financialized economy. Because I think you're making some interesting points here, and I do think that there is a possibility that if the stock market bubble bursts, maybe Bitcoin goes even higher, because that will be the option of last resort for all of the financialization in the market. They can say, well, the market's crashing, but we can all flee to Bitcoin. It's almost like a safety hatch, right? That you can
buy gold.
Right, it's the new gold, right? So, but here's the thing: is that gold has sort of a hard value that human beings have assigned to it for centuries, and Bitcoin is something that's mined by massive, server systems that sometimes hijack people's computers unbeknownst to them, and actually a lot of it's being mined in places like Venezuela, where the energy is subsidized. So instead of paying the huge energy bill, which is what you have to pay to mine cryptocurrency, because you have to use computers to go out and mine the cryptocurrency, some people are gaming the system and mining it in places like Venezuela so that they don't have to pay the energy bill. So that basically the people of Venezuela are paying for these Bitcoin millionaires to get even richer, which makes it even seem more pernicious. Now, blockchain is it's a very odd thing. I have some understanding of it, but the key to blockchain is the series of signatures on the cryptocurrency. So every signature becomes verified, and what you are doing is you're building on a series of signatures. So all the people that came before you on the blockchain, a chain of individuals that have all, in a sense, endorsed the currency, that's what gives its value, and that's what keeps it from becoming from being counterfeit, right? Because you have to have these verified signatures in the blockchain to build up the value of it. But ultimately, the idea I thought behind a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin was to create an alternative to central banking and to government-based currencies, right? So it has this sort of radical libertarian edge to it. But at this point, it kind of seems more like Van Gogh paintings, where people are rushing in to something because they believe it has an actual value that is hard to ascertain, but is something I know it when I see it kind of value, like art, and it's creating kind of a tulip mania. If you know anything about it's a tulip mania kind of thing where everybody's like rushing to get to it. Maybe we're talking again like the caviar at the end of the Soviet Union, right, where people are rushing in because they don't want to be left behind. I think it's really more reflective of the overall transition of our economy from an economy of things to an economy of financialization, where things like Forex trading, which, by the way, has been totally corrupted over the last 15 years, and there have been a number of banks who have been hit with massive fines for basically gaming the foreign exchange system, where basically, this is selling pounds and selling euros and selling yuan and selling drachmas and all blah blah. So not drachmas anymore. That's gone to the euros, but shekels. And so if you do things around the margins, if you just have like a marginal, if you and your buddies decide, well, let's just game this trade and we'll alter it by 0.1%. Economies of scale. If you're doing hundreds of millions of dollars, you all can make out nicely on it by gaming the system. That's kind of how our economy has been going for the last 35, 40 years. The world economy has been based on this. Let's trade numbers on computer screens, right? That's what foreign exchange is. That's what so many stock trades are. They're really just numbers on computer screens. It's not like, if you make a trade, you get Bob to go take a stack of dollar bills over to Tom, and Tom says, okay, we've made our stock trade. Everything is numbers. And I'm sure you're familiar with, MMT, a modern monetary theory, this idea that ultimately money is completely meaningless on some level. I mean, government debt is completely irrelevant and meaningless because basically the government could just cancel out all of its debt tomorrow if it wanted to. It's not like government. Right. It's not like somebody's going to come take all our gold.
Right. Yeah,
it's over, right? So in a sense, maybe it's emblematic of where we are as an economic system and as a society that something like Bitcoin would run amok. And all I have to say is that who at the bottom end of the economic ladder is going to be a part of this new cryptocurrency, because who's going to be able to buy into to Bitcoin when it gets to, I saw somebody today saying it's going to be $100,000 by the end of the year. Who's going to be buying into that? So again, you have this 1% world of financialization, and sadly, that's where Bitcoin seems to be going.
Well, it reminds me very much of the gold bugs out there that constantly going, you got to buy gold, and historically, only the rich bought gold. I mean, there's no one on the body. Maybe you could buy into silver and stuff like that. But this notion that gold is going to save us. But I mean, you look at the people that own the most gold are either banks, governments, or billionaires. Right. The average person is not going to be, because how can you, like you said? And Bitcoin seems even more ludicrous when, the price of one Bitcoin right now, I mean, I wish I had one, but it's crazy to think that you can just sort of get involved in this when it keeps increasing to these crazy, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be $50,000 in a few months. And then suddenly, I mean, how does anybody buy into that? It just seems, I also just, the whole thing kind of just reeks of some like weird transhumanist thing. It's just like, let's become even more integrated with technology. And, the sort of conspiracy theories that Bitcoin is created by an AI, I don't totally disregard that anymore. I mean, that seems like, the beginning to like a great science fiction movie or something. But and of course, it's the people that are constantly harping on about the transhumanist agenda and whatnot. They're all say, well, but buy Bitcoin because that's going to, I don't know, help us in some way. And just as a silly little thing, and I'm sure people are going to get, say, oh, you don't understand the technology. But like I was saying earlier, my iPhone, for whatever reason, decided to, I don't know what, change the time arbitrarily. So yesterday when my alarm went off at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I was getting ready to go to work, I didn't realize that it was actually noon. And I had slept, and I missed a whole bunch of work. That's just my stupid iPhone messing up. Can you imagine a glitch? I mean, we haven't seen it really, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that somebody could screw with the blockchain or screw with a Bitcoin exchange or something. I mean, again, it is all bits and numbers, ones and zeros on a computer. It's not impenetrable. Somebody out there will figure it out. Maybe it'll be an AI computer or something, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities. So the idea of, let's put all of our faith into the computer is just, I mean, super scary transhumanist sort of stuff.
Doesn't that really point out where we are transitionally speaking? And I think that, I look at, we talked about this last time about the news pace, and I thought about it more since our last talk. And if you're listening, you didn't listen, we were talking about the pace of news, and is there really more craziness and nuttiness and conflict happening now than any time in history. And I could go back and forth on that. I think, some of it is because we hear about it more. Maybe it's always been going on, but maybe it is more because, the United States is vacating its space as the lone superpower, intentionally and unintentionally. But I think there is a general sensibility. I have no way to prove this scientifically, but I think we kind of know as a species that we are in a transitional phase, that there is something happening here. AI is coming. The pace of technological change has been so breathtaking over the last 30 years that it's stupefying. We actually can postulate the possibility that a new cryptocurrency was created by an artificial intelligence. We start thinking about are we all going to end up being Neo in the Matrix? All of these things are not fanciful. And Peter Thiel is,
the king of this.
What he's gonna do with, all of a sudden there's going to be these sort of cyborgs that come flying out of New Zealand after he sets up his master race there of transhumanist individuals. So, but we are going to see I've written about this on the coming robot economy. Look, a lot of the investment that will come, if there is investment that comes out of this tax cut, is going to go into robotics. Why would you pay an individual to do something when you can transition to robots and artificial intelligence? This is why Silicon Valley's favorite social welfare program is the one that we don't have yet, universal basic income. Why do they want UBI? Because UBI, they realize they're going to have to pay off all of the losers of this coming economy, because there are going to be losers. Now, capitalism, whether you like it or not, it's not about arguing the merits of it. We do know that capitalism creates losers, and capitalism is not necessarily free markets. For anybody out there who's a free market head, I do think that there is a delineation to be made between free markets and capitalism. Capitalism is different because capitalism is socialism in the interest of capital, and as we see in capitalism, capitalists tend to avoid punishment for their bad decisions because they control not just the means of production, but they also control the political environment that can actually mitigate their control over the means of production. So all that being given, there are always been losers made in capitalism. There are going to be a lot of losers. And the people in Silicon Valley know that. They know that. They know that we are in a transition from an economy that really came out of World War II, which was, oil and defense and manufacturing, and companies like Westinghouse that made refrigerators and nuclear bombs.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The whole country was this manufacturing machine. That's gone. And now we've got not just 3D printing, but now you got 4D printing, which means 4D printing these are materials that will be able to assemble and repair themselves without any human intervention once they're created. I think and then you have climate change happening, and you start to have you're starting to have the beginnings of migrations that are climate related and sea level rise. I think we know that something is going to change, or something is changing, and I think that it contributes to this feeling of mania. And I also think it's one of the contributing factors is the fact that we don't have an economy of things anymore, where Tom Smith can go to the factory in the morning. He can make widgets. They're quality widgets. The company that makes those widgets sells its stock on the stock exchange because they like to have investment in making widgets. And the people who invest in the company that makes the widgets, they invest in the stock market, invest in the company through the stock market because they get a nice dividend. And then Tom, after he's done making the widgets on his way home, he can stop at the store and buy his family items with the money that he makes, and he's buying from Bill, who runs the local store. It's not Walmart. He owns the store, and he's selling widgets made by other people around the country. And so there's this integrated economy of things. It's over. It's come to an end, and it's reflective in the way we trade money and the way we view money. The way all of our money is now on a chip on a credit card, or it's in cryptocurrency, or it's in stock trades or 401ks. We don't have a hard economy of things anymore, and I think that makes many, many people very, very uneasy.
Oh, totally. It just sort of reminds me, you're talking about these things that don't have much intrinsic value, and that always reminded me like when Facebook's IPO broke or whatever. And it's valued as millions of dollars. And it's like, but what the hell is that based on? It's nothing. Yeah. It's just a social media platform. I mean, it really is actually nothing. It's just people that put up photos of themselves and rant about, whatever social issue they can't stand. Yet that's, people buy stock in that and become millionaires overnight. It's insane. And there really is zero value to Facebook. Okay.
Well, cheers. But are you on Facebook at all?
I'm not. No. Thankfully, I'm not.
So Facebook recently has been asking questions of everybody, rolled out these things. So on a Tuesday, what do you like to have for lunch? Do you eat the same thing every day for breakfast? What if you had to choose between these two bands, what bands would you listen to? Well, you do a little digging and you find that this is all part of their new social mining. Just like you have cryptocurrency mining, right? Mm-hmm. Operations. Facebook is a data mining project. That's all it is. It's one gigantic data mining project. And what it turns out is that Facebook's product is not itself per se, as you point out. Facebook's product is us. Yeah. We're the product. Anybody who is on Facebook is the product. And that, again, gets back to this sort of weird world that we're entering into where information has so much value and is being valued so highly. The information that Facebook is able to cull from you is considered very, very valuable by what? By corporations that want to modulate themselves in such a way that they can actually modulate their selling appeals on an individual basis. It's no longer one big ragu campaign. I'm going to date myself here, but great commercial. And I'm going to say this because I love your theme music. It always takes me back to 1982. But there was a great campaign for ragu spaghetti. That's a spicy meatball. It was one campaign. It was for the entire country. It was very, very effective, but branding ragu. Now ragu wants to be able to make its appeals to each individual on an individual basis to get the maximum impact of their advertising dollar. And this just goes to show the extent to which everything is shifting around to us being kind of like, Neo plugged in the Matrix, where we are all part of the value that corporations are extracting from us, often unbeknownst to us.
Mm. No, and it again, along the lines of this transhumanist stuff, I mean, it's like these corporations and advertising companies almost become, sentient beings and they just sort of see us as, they're sort of batteries for their own sustainability. No, I know it's really, it's like a shocking, and I've talked about this numerous times on the show, but it is shocking how much this is actually really falling into place and how little people really seem to be like paying attention to this. And I mean, especially this sort of advertising and the materialism that just seems so prevalent now amongst society. JP, we're fast running out of time. I wanted to just get your take very quickly. We can kind of end on a happy note the next few minutes. But what do you make of Trump's continued problems drinking water? Is there anything to this?
Well, okay. I'm not big on rumor mongering, but I do know that inside the Beltway and on Capitol Hill, there is a thought that Trump is a drug user of some sort. Mm. And
he's got the cokehead sniff all the time.
Yeah, and those are epic cases of cottonmouth.
Yes.
And not to reveal too much, I've had a case of cottonmouth or two in my time.
Yeah.
Way back in the old days, when we were young and rough and tumbling. But those are some. So it's either there's the one speech when he came back from his Asia trip. I thought, man, is he having a trans-ischemic attack, which is sort of a little mini stroke? Mm-hmm. Look, you drink 12 Diet Cokes a day, it's going to do something to you.
Yes, absolutely. JP Sottile of newsvandal.com, thank you so much for joining me in the first hour. And in the second hour, we're going to have Aaron Franz from theageoftransitions.com, so stay tuned.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes. I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
This is Rick Simpson, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me in American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys because they have all the technology. They have all these great things that they're going to do. But obviously, they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms. And American English is loaded with euphemisms because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. I'll give you an example of that. When I was a little kid, if I got sick, they wanted me to go to the hospital and see the doctor. Now they want me to go to a health maintenance organization. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. The government doesn't lie. It engages in disinformation. Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? They never mention that part of it to us, do they? Never mention that part of it.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5, rocket copy. 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you are just joining us right now in the second hour, in the first hour, we were joined by a good friend of the show, JP Sottile of newsvandal.com. And we should be joined by another good friend of the show, Aaron Franz from the ageoftransitions.com and Transresistor Radio. Although I believe Aaron is running a little bit late, so we'll hopefully be having him connected to the call in the next few minutes or so. But of course, lots for me to discuss, and I wanted to, if you'll grant me this honor, bear with me, I just want to do a little shameless plugging of myself, and I just wanted to say that if, in case you didn't see, but the last week's show with F. Lee Bailey and Pat McKenna was actually got some really amazing exposure, and I dare say that show went even a little viral, and I didn't realize this at the time, but when Lee and Pat were recording in the offices of, I believe it's John Romano, a lawyer down in Florida, I didn't know this, but Jane Musgrave was actually in the room, and people, I hope, are a little familiar with Jane Musgrave's work. She writes for the Palm Beach Post, and I've linked up to numerous articles by Jane Musgrave, and because she writes a lot about Jeffrey Epstein, and she's one of the few journalists out there that actually has been following up with this story and, constantly reporting on it, all the little developments. You'll see, on my Twitter feed, for instance, I always retweet articles by Musgrave because, as I said, she's basically the only one that's still kind of following this case, especially developments down in Palm Beach. So, court dates and developments and things like that. And so I didn't realize this, but Jane was actually in the room when we were recording, and then ended up writing an article about the interview in the Palm Beach Post. And I was a little bummed that my name wasn't included, although Jane Musgrave did, she gave the show name, and she linked back to my website, which was awesome. I would have loved if my name was in there, and also maybe if, brought to you by AFR was in there as well. But very, very cool. I'm very honored. I'm actually going to be speaking with Jane Musgrave, although I don't think she's going to. She says she doesn't do interviews, like live stuff. But I am going to be asking her some questions and stuff for some research on the Jeffrey Epstein case and some stuff that I'm working on in regards to all of that. So that'll be very fascinating. But of course, then it didn't just stop there. And I just wanted to say too, I was, a big shout out to Jane Musgrave because, she wrote a very fair article. She didn't call me a conspiracy theorist. She didn't, a lot of times if you get picked up by like a, mainstream outlet or big outlet or something like that. And the Palm Beach Post is not a small newspaper by any stretch. It's, I think it's like the 7th largest newspaper in Florida, and it's like nationally, it's like in the top, 30 or 40 newspapers in the country. But a lot of time you get mentioned or something, and it's conspiracy theorist so and so said this, and or they they'll nitpick past things you've covered. Anybody that is familiar with Abby Martin's work knows that when she gets written about in mainstream outlets, it's always 9/11 conspiracy theorist Abby Martin says such and such. So disregard everything that she's saying at the moment, because God forbid she covered controversial topics in the past. But so I was really pleased with the way the article is written, and then lo and behold, it got picked up by probably my favorite newspaper in the world, the Daily Mail, aka the Daily Fail, and it was a big piece. And they again didn't mention my name, but mentioned the name of the show, linked back to my website. So it's very, very cool. And then I just got a message earlier this morning from a good friend Brian Heiss, who he told me that it's I'm now the show is or the article covering this is in such far-flung places as Ghana. There's 2 Ghanaian news sites that also talked about the interview and talked about Lee and Pat's upcoming book. So really, really cool stuff. I did want to just a quick little note on the way that the media, particularly the mainstream media, covers stories like this, or just stories in general. It's really odd, So I know that Jane Musgrave listened to the full 2 hours. She's in the room, and she wrote up the article, and she even took quotes directly from the interview and put them in the article, and then. I didn't expect much from the Daily Mail, but they, essentially just sort of rewrote her article. And then I assume it was because it was in the Mail, which is such a big news outlet, that then it got picked up by all these other sites, including in Ghana and some big crime websites. I think the crimeonline.com, which is I think the owner of that is like Nancy Grace's manager or agent or whatever. So pretty big news outlet, which of course, did not like that I was talking about OJ and stuff like that. But, none of them mention my name, which is not that difficult to find. If you just Google the name of the website and the show that you've included, you'll find my name in there. But none of them mention my name, and they all basically just ripped off of Musgrave's article. And it's like one of those sort of funny moments where you really kind of like get a peek behind how lazy journalism is that none of them could be bothered to maybe listen to the show. None of them could be bothered to at least maybe like, go to my website and you could see the description and they could maybe piece together some stuff. They basically everybody just copied Jane Musgrave's article. And I don't know, it was just one of those interesting moments where you just see quite how lazy people are. And this is like, I've talked about this before, but, the way that a news site, even a big one, you could, across the spectrum from, CNN to Russia Today, they'll have a topic or something they want to talk about. And rather than say, send a reporter to a location and get some quotes from people, real life quotes where you're literally talking to them face to face. They don't do that. They don't even necessarily call up some people on the phone, talk to some local officials or just call some people in the phone book, and try and get some quotes from them, say on the phone. What do? They just go to Twitter. They just go to Twitter and they pick out a bunch of random idiots that have a really strong opinion. They're never going to get someone that's nuanced in an opinion, and they just take that and they don't even necessarily quote them in the article. They just put up a screenshot of the tweet, and that counts as like journalism nowadays. So yeah, just a fascinating sort of look, and I guess I know I'm kind of just. It probably sounds like I'm bragging a bit, and I guess I am. But, it was just sort of interesting to see that firsthand, and to see myself kind of be involved. And I was sort of mentioned in a Sputnik.com article talking about, it was really about Tom Secker and Matt Alford, but I was like mentioned in it briefly, or they linked to a video that I did, unfortunately for a disreputable news site, NewsBud. Or it was at that point Boiling Frogs, but they linked to that. But of course they didn't give my name or anything, and I was my video came just after a video by Mark Dice or whatever, that idiot YouTube celebrity that's always going on about the Illuminati and stuff like that. But just interesting to see how journalism works and how even a viral story that's positive for you is kind of like annoying in the sort of outcome of it. But of course, yeah, if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to share the links and stuff like that. It is definitely a big draw for the show, for AFR, for everything like that to be mentioned in the Daily Mail, which is just phenomenal. And of course, I want to just thank Pat McKenna and F. Lee Bailey for coming on the show, and of course, Jane Musgrave for getting the ball rolling and writing a wonderful article that linked back to me and talked about the show. So, very cool stuff. I will be getting F. Lee Bailey and Pat McKenna back on the show soon. And just another little note on that, there's a lot of people that when I do an OJ thing, or even Epstein. Or any sort of large topic that I cover, maybe CIA in Hollywood, something like that. They go, it's always on YouTube comments. They always go and they say, oh, well, you left out this, you left out that. You don't really know what you're talking about with the case. Why don't you mention these things? This is like an ongoing process with me. This is a topic that I constantly cover over and over again. So please don't, inundate me with these whiny little whinging comments about how I'm not covering certain things. I say it's like I've got 6 hours just with Pat McKenna. I've probably got maybe 4.5 hours just with Steven Singular, where we get into all this stuff. And I don't really want to rehash every little thing when I have someone like F. Lee Bailey on the show. I know I didn't really get to cover everything I wanted to. But, it's you have a guest on, big guest for the first time. You kind of want to, let them warm up to you a little bit, and I it's not like I'm never going to have him back on. I'm definitely going to have him back on. So, don't worry. I'll be able to address some of these questions and things like that. So, just relax a little bit. I know it's really like a certain group of people that want to comment on these things, but keep it easy. It's all right. It's all going to be okay. And I don't know why too. You listen to 2 hours of my show if you are convinced that the true verdict of the trial, and you just disagree with me on everything. I'm not quite sure why you listen, but anyway, there it is. And we're still waiting for Aaron. I'm like updating here. I keep checking my phone to see if he's texted me or anything. He has not, but I'm sure we'll get Aaron on the line soon. But I guess a little update as well. I mentioned this in the first hour when we were talking, but as many of you know, Christoph Gehrman and I we're relaunching Porkins Great Game. We are not totally sure how regular episodes are going to be. We're going to try our best to keep back to the monthly schedule at least. And we will also try our best to keep up with the bonus podcasts and stuff like that. But, if you haven't already figured it out, Christoph and I are both very busy. Christoph is extremely busy with schoolwork and things like that. And we don't always have the time to prepare hour and a half episode, in-depth geopolitical episode with analysis and all the sorts of things that we like to do on the show. So, it's not always possible, but we are going to try our best to keep to a regular schedule with all of that. But we attempted to record yesterday, Monday, we did record. We had a great hour and a half conversation. We talked about, as many of you will have seen from our Twitter feeds, we talked about this very fascinating book called The Unquiet Frontier, which is written by Aaron West Mitchell, and Jacob Griegel, both of whom are in the State Department right now. Wes Mitchell is the Assistant Secretary for State for European and Eurasian Affairs. So this was the position held most recently by Victoria Nuland. So an extremely important and influential position within the State Department. And I believe Griegel is on the State Department Planning Committee. These are both people that were nominated by Donald Trump and approved. And they've written a very fascinating, very in your face, I guess, sort of a geopolitical analysis in the form of this book, The Unquiet Frontier. And we talked about that. We talked about how, aspects of the sort of thesis of the Unquiet Frontier has entered into reality with many of Trump's foreign policy decisions. There are even lines in Trump's amazing speech the other day on national security that are like ripped from Mitchell and Greigel's book, in fact. And we recorded this. It was great. We talked about Saakashvili. We talked about Chechen freedom fighters in Ukraine, all this stuff. And then we finished the recording, and then lo and behold, none of my audio is recorded, just never. I don't know what the hell happened. I tried all night to try and figure out if there was a way to salvage it. Tom Secker was fiddling with it this morning, and we just couldn't get it to work. So we will be recording it again on Wednesday, tomorrow. So it might be a little bit late in coming out, but I promise it'll be out before the end of December. But I believe our good friend Aaron Franz is on the line. Aaron, are you there?
I'm here. Hello.
Okay, excellent. I was getting nervous there because I was sort of running out of crap to say, and I was going to start, pulling up some headlines on the internet or something. But Aaron, how are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you in that situation, but it's good to be here. Glad that you had me.
Oh yeah, well, I think it's always good to have a refresher course in rambling for an hour when because sometimes we get so used to relying on guests and things like that. I think it's always good to sort of be on the spot there for a little bit. But Aaron, I guess you probably didn't catch our conversation in the first hour, but we were talking about Bitcoin and the transhumanist aspects of it, and maybe we'll get to a little bit with that with you. But what's been going on lately with you? Because I know I just did some shameless plugging of myself in the beginning of the second hour. So why don't you give us a little shameless plugging of yourself? Because you've been a regular now on AFR, guest hosting for Jordan Maxwell's show. You're also on our good friend Chuck Ocelli's show now. I think it's Wednesday night. So what have you been up to?
Yeah, I've been doing those things. I've been doing the regular podcast Trans Resistor Radio once a month, Themes and Memes once a month. Uncle the podcast very regularly. So, theageoftransitions.com is the main website where my stuff is. And yeah, I'm actually on Twitter now, as you know. So
very cool.
T-minus 10 minutes till Armageddon occurs, So yeah, lots of stuff going on. Yeah, a lot of fun. It's great being on all these shows, and regular spot with Chuck Ocelli Wednesdays, the guest hosting the Jordan Maxwell show, being on with you. I've done a lot of guest spots lately. It's been awesome.
I know. Yeah, no, it's cool. You made me feel like I need to kind of get myself out there more. Because every time I check my RSS feed, you're on another show or doing something else. So it's very cool. Aaron, I guess it is the holiday season, and I feel like now you're sort of like our resident expert on holidays. We did the Halloween special together, and so I guess while I have you on the line, how has your Christmas season been thus far? Because I've got to say I'm not really feeling the Christmas spirit right now. I'm basically done with my shopping and stuff, but I don't even have my Christmas tree up yet. Hopefully I'll get that on Thursday. But how do you feel about Christmas?
Well, very similar to you, to be quite honest about it. The reason I was late here is I was getting ready for some Christmas guests coming to the house here soon. So that's what's going on there. So yeah, everybody's dealing with that. Yeah, and for some reason this year I'm not as excited as I sometimes get, because I do like the holiday. And of course, it's the winter solstice, I guess, if we want to get back into that winter solstice, the sun staying in the same point in the sky for 3 days and then rising back to life again. So that whole aspect that for some reason, if you're a good Christian, you just can't get on board with the fact that connects to Christianity in any way. I'm not sure that's fine, but it was important to somebody at some time, I would argue that's important to a lot of people now. And, you go in, you're talking about Masonic architecture and stuff. They always align things so it lines up with locations of celestial bodies, certainly the sun. So it's always important. These motions of the heavens, our observation of them on Earth, the changing of the seasons. And you look at the holidays. I mean, all the holidays take place in a certain season at a certain time in the season for a very specific reason. So it's very much about, life and death, and with this being kind of the coming of winter, you got the symbolism of death coming. But of course, you got death and you've got rebirth, and the promise of rebirth for everybody because of the Savior. These things. So it's always about the seasons. It's always about the cycle of life, because you always come back around to the same holiday again.
So I guess what you're trying to tell us is it's not about buying a new Lexus or going jewelry or going to Home Depot and getting tools for Dad, because that is, mostly what the holidays have become a part. I was just talking about this recent, just my total hatred of how materialistic Christmas has become. And the sort of just buying gifts to buy gifts, with no thought put into them at all. And not that I'm really would consider myself a good Catholic anymore, but part of me almost wishes I was, just to have that some sort of a deeper sense of Christmas, and it's not just buy crap because the TV told you to. Aaron, big question: are you a real tree or artificial tree?
Oh God, I'm kind of embarrassed to say artificial, but
Aaron.
Yeah, I know.
Is it a green one or a white one? Because I'd like the artificial white trees.
It's green. Okay. Realize, this is my disclaimer, this is my excuse, is that I'm a married man, so those sorts of things I'm not really in charge of around the house. I just kind of have to go with it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, when you're all married folks out there will know what I'm talking about. So,
Right. There's another influence at play here with the Christmas tree.
Yeah. Well, and you got to remember too, I live in a full house here. It's not just my wife that lives here with me. It's of course my uncle, my uncle-in-law, and my mother-in-law. So I've got other things to do. I just have to kind of roll with a lot of things.
No, I hear you on that. And I was even debating, it was am I not going to get one this year? But I guess I'm going to do my best to kind of be in the holiday spirit and get one. Aaron, is there anything on Christmas trees? Is there anything sort of occultic about? I mean, it always seemed a bit odd to me that we buy this tree and we, of course we keep it alive in our house, but then inevitably we all sort of stop watering the tree at some point, and we kind of, we just, whatever, I don't care. It becomes this nuisance, and I remember last year we kept our tree not nearly as long as a friend of mine had his tree up until March or something like that. And then he just put it in his backyard, and I remember going over there late in March and it was all brown, and I was like, what in the hell? This is a fire hazard. Yeah. But I definitely let my tree kind of linger a little bit too long last year, and it did become this thing I hated, this dead, this corpse in my house. I mean, what do you make of all that?
Well, it's again another play on everlasting life and rebirth and things like that. Of course, it's an evergreen tree, right? Mm-hmm. So symbolic of perpetual life, the perpetual life that is inherent in nature. The mother gives birth to her son through the Immaculate Conception, and he's born on Christmas, right? So there's that aspect to it, but you're also cutting down the evergreen tree. So there's, there's something going on with death, and then of course you discard the tree. So, I mean, this may be reading into it a bit much, but it does dry out pretty quick. And you're right about the fire hazard thing; those things go up quick. Yeah. So there's the whole fire, it was a living thing, but then it's burnt, its spirit is cast, it goes up into the heavens and that sort of thing. And there's some, I want to say it's like a Greek god, or I forget. There's some legend of some god from some antiquity. I can't remember the specifics now, but they castrate themselves underneath a evergreen tree. I believe they castrate themselves as part of this ritual that's symbolic of, again, attaining this sort of everlasting life. That it doesn't seem to make much sense, but on the surface of it, but it is, So I wish I could recall that specifically, but I do remember that being kind of linked to the tree.
That would make a great ornament or something.
Sure would.
Anyone out there looking for, make a couple bucks at Christmas? There you go. Ornament makers out there that are listening. I would definitely buy one. I'm sure Aaron would as well.
Yeah.
They make a great stocking stuffer. Well, Aaron,
Walmart might not carry it. But,
right? Yeah. No. Definitely.
It's more of a Spencer's Gifts kind of item there.
Yeah. What's there? Do you know what? There's like a big it's like a craft store out in the Midwest, and they're like owned by some super duper Bible born again Christians or something. Hobby Lobby.
Oh yeah, Hobby Lobby.
Yeah. I was just saying, I doubt they would carry it either. But I remember my sister, when she lived in Kansas City, she always went to Hobby Lobby, and you could buy they would have just rows and rows of little wooden crosses that you could paint and decorate and stuff like that. It was just such a strange craft store. But seeing as we're going into some weird directions, is there anything that has sort of struck you in the news lately that you want to talk about? Any sort of odd things? I would, if you want to, we could talk a little bit about. You did a recent show on, is it Corey Lewandowski? The sort of founder of this AI, I don't know, religion or something like that. I guess the weird one for me, of course, and as I say this, I'm looking at Aaron's avatar on Skype, which is an alien head smoking a doobie. And we had this some declassified video, I think from 2004, of a naval pilot that spotted a UFO, and apparently there was this whole big program that just recently got defunded. So again, the Pentagon is still actively looking at UFOs. I don't really know what the hell that's supposed to mean, but any odd, weird stories in the news that sort of struck your fancy?
Yeah, well, I know you were talking about Bitcoin there in the first hour, as you're saying, and there is a connection back to transhumanism and all that. Actually, with the blockchain technology, that's it's the famous thing with the security and the keeping records and yada yada yada. I had no idea what blockchain was at all. I just about a week ago I looked it up to try to understand what it is. Okay, what is this blockchain? And then other people have come out and kind of pointed the finger that blockchain technology is sort of this subversive way to have AI systems develop themselves autonomously, sort of the vision of the singularity, where the machines start learning themselves. And and somebody was claiming, I forget the guy's name, I wish I could, I don't remember his name either, but he was claiming that that's going on. And there's definitely blockchain being utilized in this sort of burgeoning AI economy that's being built through this thing called Singularity Net. Do you know what Singularity Net is?
No, I don't really. I feel like I have a vague sense, but it's probably wrong.
Yeah, it's Singularity Net is this organization that is I want to say, is it Hansen from Hansen Robotics? I think he's involved, but I know for sure that one of the big guys involved is Ben Goertzel, who is, do you know him?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah. So, this is important. He's, of course, a chair of H+, used to be a World Transhumanist Association. He's a chair there. He's big-time AI researcher and AGI proponent, always talking about
He worked at Google, too, right? For a little while?
I believe so. Some of the projects he's worked on are impressive. He's done AI programs for the CDC and the National Institute of Health. Those were, for doing bioinformatics. And then he's also done work for the NSA.
Of course.
Yeah. So he's done that. He's been around. He's a character, and he's like a genius level guy. He graduated high school. He's like 15, fast tracked to college. He got the doctoral thing going, and so he's like this whiz kid of AI, and he's not a kid anymore, but he's involved with all these big projects. And SingularityNet is he's like the main scientist involved with this SingularityNet project.
I think we've talked about it before, but Sophia, the AI system that just was granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia, she's connected to SingularityNet.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and that's by Hanson Robotics. And it's either Hanson Robotics or it's David Hanson and Ben Goertzel who work. They're the guys behind Hanson Robotics and also this SingularityNet project. And they're using Sophia as like this PR stunt. That's what what it is. It's like a PR stunt to actually it's a multi-pronged thing. They're not doing just one thing, but one of the things they're doing is promoting SingularityNet in the process. And they're saying, yeah, here's Sophia, she's really cool looking, but it could be better. And we're not claiming that this is like some amazing, the best AI program out there in the world, or that it's anything near a general intelligence, but we're hooking Sophia up to SingularityNet, and as that improves, she'll improve, and she will continue to be this spokesperson for the company, for the companies, Hanson Robotics, and then also SingularityNet. You know what I mean? So, and SingularityNet is one of these projects that Ben Goertzel is. He's been involved in other like open source AI development programs, like OpenCog.
Yes.
You know that one, right? The one Jeffrey Epstein funded?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was his open source. It was kind of like the GitHub sort of thing. Well, actually, SingularityNet's like that, where you develop AI, AI applications and whatnot, and you put them on this big server where everybody can basically work along with them, or they can use your algorithms on their projects and you work together, blah, 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 blah. And that's what the SingularityNet is. It's kind of like they're trying to monetize that system where people bring their AI applications, they put them on SingularityNet, just like you put an API on GitHub or whatever. So it's there, and it's basically open for hire. So companies can sign on to SingularityNet and go, okay, we need an AI that does this. And then SingularityNet is meant to kind of like give you the different AI applications that work for your purpose. And it's supposed to kind of like be intelligent in the manner that it distributes these AI systems to your company too. It's like, oh yeah, and the system will be automated as an AI doing this. It's like, okay, yeah, here's this, you need this and this application will do this application will do that. The two will actually work together, and we'll get this third one to do this specific task for the two that they can't do. So that's what's going on. And the way to monetize it, here's where the connection to blockchain. They're going to monetize this through blockchain technology somehow. I'm not sure how this is going to work, but whenever a AI application is used by a company, a blockchain whatever is created. So it's like, okay, it got used, therefore, that's basically it punching in on the time clock. It got used, so it made this money, and there's the blockchain record of that. So these the grand vision is that these AIs just start doing a bunch of stuff on their own. They're getting contracted out, of course, but they're making money in the process, you see?
for themselves or for the company?
That's what I can't figure out. I'm like, okay, they're making this money. It's recorded via blockchain, but where's the money go? I think the money goes back to whoever initially put the particular AI algorithm or application or whatever it is. Whoever put that thing up gets the money, I think. But again, they all work together, so it could be like one project could have all sorts of different developers making money on it, right?
Yeah. That's so bizarre and sort of horrifying, all at the same time. And I don't know if you saw this. I'm sure you did. But Sophia supposedly also created her own cryptocurrency, or the sort of early stages, or she wants to develop her own cryptocurrency, which of course is sort of fed into the rumors that we talked about in the first hour that Bitcoin was created by some sort of AI system. But it's. I mean, again, we're sort of we talked about this a little bit in the first hour, but I mean, the Sophia stuff really seems like, and you and I have talked about this before. The sort of perception of AI is always sort of like it's not really quite there, but maybe it is in secret. And the Sophia stuff seems like the sort of first step of really kind of like pushing this forward. And obviously, so much of what she does, I'm saying she like she's a real person, is. No, exactly. They've already sort of won that battle. Is like a PR stunt, Yeah. But I guess I don't know. I wonder like the deeper sort of stuff behind all of that. And how far this has really come. Like I'm saying, Sophia's on the cover of magazines. It meets world leaders. Sophia, I think, was on the Jimmy Kimmel show, or no, I'm sorry,
Fallon.
Fallon, yeah, the other idiot. Jimmy Fallon show.
Jimmy.
Yeah, I know. Both of them are terrible.
Which Jimmy will be top Jimmy? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's Jimmy Kimmel. Who, I guess I don't really know which one I hate more, but probably both of them equally. But enough about them. But it's kind of shocking how I guess I was surprised at how few people were like outraged or at least sort of like freaked out by that. It was just kind of like, yeah, okay, right. Sophia's here now. I guess citizen of Saudi Arabia, and she's developing cryptocurrencies, and this is all good. Don't worry about it.
The Saudi Arabia thing was a big scandal because, of course, the women have zero rights in Saudi Arabia.
I know.
They can drive, right?
Yeah. Well, no, not even yet, Aaron. It's going to be a few years before they can actually take, because now they've got to quote unquote train the women how to drive.
Okay, yeah, big project there. So yeah, obviously the scandal was over. Hey, look, real women don't have any rights in Saudi Arabia. Now you're making this artificial woman, giving her citizenship. This is, what does that say about your ethics and things like that? And yeah, there are so many different things going on here. But definitely this is just par for the course with all this. This is all part of, it's PR, yes, but the guys doing this kind of get, they take offense to that when you say, oh yeah, this is PR. Because even when they'll admit that's true to an extent, it's always something more to them. You know what I mean? This is like, again, this is a religious thing in many senses. It's a magical thing. Hansen, I think it's David is his first name, David Hansen, but the man who is the name of Hansen Robotics and involved with the Singularity Net, working with Ben Goertzel, he's a former Disney Imagineer. Did you know that?
Right. Yeah.
So that if you know anything about the Disney Imagineers, I mean, they're alchemists. It's all about bringing, using your magical powers to imbue life into what was previously dead matter. Essentially, is what it is. The building of rides at the theme parks, and the crafting of experience that crafted in such a way with such art that it makes a specific impression upon the minds of the masses that ride that ride on a daily basis. So all sorts of complex, esoteric stuff going on with the Imagineers. I met an Imagineer back when I met a lot of these guys actually, but I met an Imagineer. He was kind of high up in the organization too, I think, but he came through the bike shop I was working at in Long Beach during a TED talk. He came in with Bill Nye the Science Guy, and they were doing this. Okay. They were doing this bike ride out on the bike path, like on the LA River, where Bill Nye would point out, like where the plates shifted or something. So this Imagineer was like at the head of that, and of course they couldn't rent bikes from my bike shop. They had to bring in their like multi-thousand, like $14,000 bikes to do the little bike tours. So we had them. We got them already. So I don't know. I'm just getting into weird stories, but yeah, Disney Imagineers, interesting. This Sophia project, it's another sort of magical thing about bringing this to life. Ben Goertzel is, I don't even know where to begin with that guy, but he's into some whacked out stuff for sure. So you better believe he understands what's going on with all this too.
Well, no, that's always one of my fears with it is the way that people talk about something like the blockchain. Suddenly now, apparently everyone's a freaking expert on the blockchain. You know what I mean? It's like some, I don't know, libertarian YouTuber knows everything about the blockchain. And I'm not saying that people can't learn what it is, but my general thought is, when you hear people like Ben Goertzel talking about it, it's like on another level, I mean, he's talking about this in a way more complex way. And I'm sorry, everybody suddenly that's trading in Bitcoin has, most of them, I would assume, have no idea what the blockchain is, how it really functions, or if there is like a more sinister purpose behind it, or if there is a way of manipulating it that we are maybe not quite privy to. So that's always my fear with it. Well, shifting gears slightly, but sort of still staying in this weird realm, along with the sort of pushing Sophia and stuff, I'm sure you've noticed, Aaron, but suddenly sex robots are like all over the news. I just Googled like sex robot right now, and this is a headline news on the Daily Mail. Annual sex robot convention is axed from London's Goldsmiths University over fears it would provoke a terror attack by Muslim extremists. I don't even know why they would care, but there you go. But this again has become something that's like kind of everywhere in the news. There was like some big articles that were written about it. There was a documentary that came out on like Channel 4 or ITV in the UK, profiling this one guy who's sort of become like the new face of the, I don't know, the pro-sex robot movement. Because he has this like sex robot, but he's also married and his wife is like totally cool with it. And he's like quoted as saying like I couldn't choose between one or the other if I had to, which is like, dude, really? Like, what in God's name do you make of that, Aaron? Because that to me is like almost the way that sort of just slipped in, and it's like, yeah, like we're having annual sex robot conventions, and maybe the terrorists might attack them.
Yeah, I mean, the transhumanists have been talking about the sex robots and all sorts of like virtual reality technologies that are going to be, different version of the same thing. They've been talking about that a long time. And yeah, this has kind of been a story on the fringes. I mean, those real doll things were an early incarnation of this same thing, basically. And that was, that got to be kind of well known. I don't want to say that was over a decade ago that they came out. So I feel like it's always been kind of like hinted at that this was coming. I mean, in popular culture, there's lots of instances of this. All sorts of movies, Electric Light Orchestra. Yeah, Electric Light Orchestra has like songs about it and stuff, So we've heard about this for a long time. So clearly, I mean, we saw this coming in a way. But yeah, it's bizarre to see it actually happening. And there's always like a slew of annoying stories when these things like make it big or whatever, when they get out into the mass awareness. I saw one where somebody's saying we must ban all sex robots, and you only see the headline. I'm like, I don't want to read this.
I don't want to click on this one.
I want to know why you feel that way. But you can guess. You can read the headline, pretty much pull what you need from those. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's weird. It's weird, but it's gonna get weirder for sure. I mean, I think they're kind of like clumsy when it comes to whatever the virtual reality aspect of all this stuff is going to be moving into the future. That's going to be what's really crazy.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And you look at like even things like the Oculus, and it's like it's not that cool. Like no one's really rushing out to buy an Oculus Rift for Christmas. And I mean, not to get too graphic or obscene, but I mean the sex robots too are not. It's like there's no way you're like this is a real person, which is almost like I find that to be the even more disturbing thing. Like less so that they would do it with like a robot, but more that like you want this like lifeless corpse that you have to move around.
Yeah.
Especially with just everything that's been in the news. I know you covered this recently on TM podcast, the sex scandals, and the whole everything, the Me Too movement, all this sort of wave of sexual assault stuff that's been happening. I mean, there's something like even creepier when you look at this obsession with like sex robot, these lifeless corpses that you have to move around.
You know what's interesting about all this is somebody who wanted to do this sort of thing a decade or two back would have kept it to themselves, right? Even assuming there were sex robots, they would have done it with the curtains drawn, right? Nobody, they don't want anybody to know about that. But now, I mean, things are changing where people are more exhibitionist, quite frankly, about everything. And I was thinking on the whole like sex scandal hot craze, whatever's going on now, with Weinstein, Spacey, et cetera, and all these outing of these famous people. I get this like weird sort of intuition that it's linked to the same general phenomena of that being just everybody kind of putting their entire lives out in the open. And one aspect of this is because you will have no choice other than to do that in the world we're going into, and you look at Ben Goertzel, bring it back to him. He's a guy who's called for surveillance. He's advocated it as like this wonderful thing. And he actually, I'll give him credit. Like I don't hate Ben Goertzel. I actually kind of respect him in a lot of ways for different things. And one of the things is that he kind of walks the walk is with the surveillance thing. He posts his resume with his like phone number. I believe I've been meaning to call that, by the way, too. I haven't done that ever. But
Sophia
he posts,
picks up.
Well, I don't know, but he posts that just online for everybody to see. And the reason is because he's calling for the surveillance thing, and he means it. He's like, yeah, everybody's going to basically know everything. Everything's just going to be open, and that's a wonderful thing. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this is the direction we're kind of heading, and I just get the inkling that this whole like these allegations against people and like pointing the finger and be like, you can't hide in the dark anymore, right? We know what you do. We know what everybody does now. So of course the big selling point is, hey, look, nobody can get away with doing bad stuff anymore. Or so we think, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a definite trend that's brewing in the background of all this weirdness, I would say.
No, totally. Well, and I mean, I'm like, not even really of two minds of it, because I think on some level, I think I do think it's great that suddenly, people are being called out, and and hopefully some of these people will actually. I mean, the Weinstein thing looks like he might actually have to face like legal proceedings over some rape allegations and sexual assault allegations, and that's great. Mm-hmm. But like on another side, I mean, I also wonder if the which is sort of off topic, but I mean, the conversation is less about why this is occurring and more it is occurring. we should call these people out. And it's like, right, but if there's no real like proceedings or there's no real consequences to this aside from their lives being over as like a public figure, then are people just going to become more clever at covering this up? It's like people that lauded the body cams on cops. Well, you just see now a lot of cops just turn them off. If they're going to if they're going to do something illegal, they just turn off the body cam. And occasionally it's fun when you see, I don't know, I think it was in LA, this cop with a body cam pulls a bag of Coke out of, I don't know, his pocket, which got to wonder where that came from. And he like points at the other cop and he's like, look. And then you see him slipping it into the guy's pocket, this guy they've arrested for like no reason. And then he pulls it out. And okay, cool, we got that. But how many cops out there just turn off the body cam when they put, a bag of Coke from their pocket into a suspect's pocket? Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Again, that's sort of totally off topic, and we're fast running out of time, Aaron.
Yeah.
Anything you want to leave the listeners with, maybe on a slightly more positive note, as we've sort of strayed into more scarier territory.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, with this, I mean, all this stuff is so crazy, and I'm very much opposed to so much of this. But at the same time, I mean, we just got to deal with all this as it comes. It's happening, so we got to find a way to deal with it. And yeah, like you said, there's ways around stuff. There's always going to be a way around it. So anybody who just takes this as like it's going to be the solution to anything is deluded. But it works on all sides of the issue. You don't have to. You just have to find a way to make things work, because there's all sorts of developments on the way with this stuff. It's just gonna keep racing and racing. So you got to just keep a cool head, because ultimately there's nothing that you can do to stop it being just this massive tidal wave of change that's happening. You can't do that. So just do what you can and be content with that, I'd say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would echo that, and keep an eye out for all those things. Aaron, once again, remind all the listeners, because we've got more and more people that are tuning into the show, where they can go to find out about your work, all the podcasts you do, and anything on the horizon, any exciting new episodes you've got in the pipeline.
The Age of Transitions is the main website. You can find links to all my shows there. Subscribe to Trans Resistant Radio, Themes and Memes, even Uncle the Podcast if you're so inclined. It's just, business as usual. I've got a Patreon campaign for people to sign up. I do an episode of that a month. So yeah, I've been reading quite a bit and looking into stuff and making an effort to try to put the pieces together like I love to do. I really have felt reinvigorated in that sense lately. So I'm feeling good here on my end, looking at insane things. So you can reap the benefits by listening to my shows.
Yes, absolutely. And definitely encourage people to sign up to Aaron's Patreon. I am a patron of Aaron's. So I can assure you that it is well worth it. Aaron, did you see the new Star Wars?
Not yet.
Okay. Then no spoilers.
Okay.
Although I think we kind of talked about this on Twitter recently.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I sort of gave some of my opinions on it, and maybe that would be maybe we could do Uncle the Podcast on Star Wars.
Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, maybe we will.
Aaron, thank you for joining us today. I know it was last minute, and you were one of my go-to guys when I don't have a show to do. So I hope people appreciate everything that you do for me on the show. Thank you for joining me, Aaron. Again, please, everybody, go and check out theageoftransitions.com. Lots of stuff on there. Thank you for listening to Porkins Policy Radio. Of course, you can support me by going to patreon.com/Pierce Redmond. I will be talking to you very soon. I've got Tom Seckert next week, but until then, I will be talking to you very soon.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me. American Freedom Radio, Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys because they have all the technology. They have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
Assassination. You know what's interesting about assassination? Well, not only does it change those popularity polls in a big hurry, but it's also interesting to notice who it is we assassinate. Did you ever notice who it is? Stop to think of who it is we kill. It's always people who've told us to live together in harmony and try to love one another. Jesus, Gandhi, Lincoln, John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, John Lennon. They all said, try to live together peacefully. Bam! Right in the head. Apparently we're not ready for that. Yeah, that's difficult behavior for us. We're too busy sitting around trying to think up ways to kill each other. Here's one we came up with. It's efficient, too. Genocide, you know? Killing large numbers of people simply because they don't look like you, they don't talk like you, and they don't have the same kind of hats you do. You ever notice that anytime you see two groups of people who really hate each other, chances are good they're wearing different kind of hats. Keep an eye on that, it might be important.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow, friendships to flourish, with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5, rocket copy. 4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio.